Happy Friday, everybody.
It is Friday.
It is indeed. What a week it's been. Mateo went to kindergarten this week.
I thought I was going to like this chair, but I'm not.
You're a little low.
I'm a little low.
Hey, you got the other stool right there if you want to swap it out.
Yeah, I'll swap it out.
So our son started kindergarten this week, so our morning schedule is just crazy, and we're still just trying to get used to it. Things have changed. Everything's a little bit later now, which makes it a little bit more difficult for Fridays.
And the dog threw up at 2 in the morning, and that was awesome.
Oh, and of course, here's the struggle at 2 a.m. Nicole's like, she's got a little bit more of a sensitive stomach than I do. Like, so she's going, I'm like, just put a paper towel over it. I'll get it in the morning.
So gross.
And she's like, oh, the smell. I can't stand the smell.
I was like, I'm going to go upstairs and sleep if you don't take care of this. And it's 2 in the morning. We're running.
Yeah, we've got one of those.
We've
got one of those rug doctors we bought a long time ago. Like if you have dogs and you have carpets, or even cats, rug doctor. Yeah. It's like the way to go.
Picked it up at
instead of renting it all the time, like a couple $100, but it saved us a lot of rentals and keeps our carpets clean when we have these little duty incidences.
So yeah.
Did I say incidences?
Incidences. So anyway, I'm just really tired.
More coffee, please. Okay, let's do a show. You scoot over a little bit? You're in my personal space.
No.
And I don't have room to Jersey talk. So unless you want to get knocked out with a little bit of hand swinging.
Jersey talk.
Yeah, I need to be able to, you're no further over than you were. All you did was move your butt.
I'm just making sure I'm in frame.
Just angle this way. Here, ready? The rubber on the floor won't let the thing move. Oh,
well,
it's the
this box that I'm complaining
there
about. Can you just move the box?
Oh, you are something special.
Hey, you know? There. Oh, gosh.
I think people really just, they enjoy the raw husband and wife interaction that we provide every week. Okay, so hey, it is Friday. That means we're going to talk about some stuff today and a lot of blah, 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 which I know people like.
You got some questions from the Patreon?
I have some questions, which I didn't even preview because it's been a hectic morning. I did not have time to look at any of them.
You didn't even know I posted yesterday, did you?
I never pay attention.
I know.
A few things to mention, though. Of course, if you want to help us out, you could do that at patreon.com/woodwhisper. We always appreciate the support. And you can check the live show out. Let's see, we have it at thewoodwhisper.com/live. And that has the YouTube embed right there, as well as the chat room.
And I'll be grabbing chat from our questions from the YouTube chat.
Yes, and if you're on Facebook, unfortunately, we can't follow that in addition to the other chat room stuff. So I go back later and answer those questions. Okay, real quick, we've got some feeds going. So basically, this show is very specific. You either like it or you don't. So, and the files are very large. So I want to include these in an RSS feed to make it easy for people, but putting them in the main feed, it's kind of the reason why we started the Offcuts channel, was because people who just want to see projects and techniques don't necessarily want to see this. No. So what we did was created whatever you call this crap over here. So we created a separate feed for live events, and that's both audio and video. So instead of just going to Patreon, which they could have done already, we had the Patreon feed for the audio. Now you can get 2 separate feeds, one for video, one for audio. Actually, there's 2 for video. If they want SD, they can get standard definition.
So many options.
So many options. The feeds are a little convoluted. It's thewoodwhisper.com/TWW_live/ I'll put them in the show notes for you guys, okay? And then you just pop them into any feed aggregator. They'll also be in iTunes. We haven't submitted them to the store yet, but they will be there. And it'll be nice and easy for you guys to subscribe and get this stuff, and it'll be separate from the regular Wood Whisperer content. So
did I mention about the Amazon thing last week? I did, didn't I? I can't remember. Yeah, I probably did.
I think you probably did.
Yeah, because the first season's, the most current season, which is season 11, is out on Amazon. So if you missed that,
go check it out.
I am in the process of trying to get season 10 approved, and I've been getting into video editing because there are things that you do on YouTube that you cannot do on Amazon. Yeah. Like when you say, hey, click like, or click subscribe.
But it makes me glad that I have not fallen into that. Like,
you've had a few where I've had
a couple times I've done it, but most people on YouTube, like religiously, you know, be sure to like and subscribe, or you know, they're pointing at things on the screen.
That's a veto in Amazon's world.
Yeah, so thankfully,
no way can you do that.
My resistance to join the YouTuber crowd has paid off finally.
The standard practices.
Yeah, exactly.
So keep it as generic as possible, and you can go anywhere.
That's it. So yeah, it's really fun. I put my kids down in front of it, and I just let it roll because views, baby, right? And it counts. There is a child watching this stuff. She's just like this.
It's funny because the kids do kind of.
Well, it's their dad. I think they find it interesting.
It's right next to Peppa Pig and Teen Titans Go.
That's right.
It's so weird.
Okay, so
anyway,
let's get to some questions, shall we?
And I have some questions in the Friday Live chat as well.
Okay. Marshall Brooks wrote in. None of these have been previewed, so I may have to make stuff up as I go. Marc and Nicole, on your kids' kitchen helper project, after some use, is there anything you would change? Well, first of all, let's get this out of the way. It is not the kitchen helper. It's the kids' kitchen step stool.
Yes, it's a step stool.
Because we were threatened to be sued for using kitchen helper.
Yeah.
So let's just make that perfectly clear. Are you still happy with your choice of finish? I'm going to build one for my 2-year-old, thanks. So the only thing I would change is I would put my kid in it more.
Well,
it doesn't get used much, right?
I kind of wish it was a little bit more collapsible.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know there's a few people out there that have made that, but then they did something that made it...
They hinge it
in some way, and they made it more collapsible.
Well, and that's the thing. I didn't want to do that because you start making hinged components on this thing, and it's not as sturdy. And the whole goal is to keep this thing nice and sturdy. It's not to say that it can't be sturdy. It's just you have to put a lot of thought into where you have the hinge breaks and how this thing goes together. So, yeah, I guess maybe making it a collapsible format would be kind of good. But if you have a nice big kitchen, maybe it doesn't matter so much. But as far as its functionality, I think it's perfectly fine. I've just found that the kids don't use it quite as much as, I mean, maybe as Ava gets a little bit older, maybe she'll take a little more interest. Mateo just uses it to climb on top of the counter. It's a step stool to get on top of the counter so that I can yell at him for being on the counter.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Sam Davis wrote in. He says, I have watched the bandsaw setup video you did with Alex Snodgrass. I have one quick question about it. In that video, Snodgrass says to put the bottom of the blade's gullets in the middle of the wheel's crown. I'm assuming this is impossible when you're working with a blade that's close to the widest capacity of the bandsaw. If you did so, part of the blade would be off the wheels entirely. Am I missing something, or is this not possible with a wide blade? And he's right, Sam. If you don't really want the blade hanging off the wheel. I don't know exactly. I shaved my arm for the tattoo, and now I'm all itchy. I feel like
what tattoo?
This one.
Oh.
Well, because I shaved the entire arm because it looks stupid having like monkey hair on one spot and like baby soft on the other. Anyways, I don't know what, I bet you someone in the chat room, because this is a common question, I bet someone has seen Alex's answer to this. So if you know what his answer is, if the blade is too big to do the whole centering thing because it, winds up putting a lot of the blade off of the wheel, what's his suggestion for that? Is it get it as close as you can or center the blade completely on the wheel? I don't know for sure. So we'll have to pass that off. Okay, Chuck Rice says, I'm having trouble with mortised hinges on box lids. I could do the mortise okay, but the trouble is I don't know how to place the barrel of the hinge properly, and I wind up with a box lid that's skewed all the time. Any suggestions? Thanks for all the great content. I love Friday Live, especially the monthly PM version. Yay. When's that coming up?
It's almost the end of August, so...
Yeah, soon, huh?
It'll be September.
Okay, beginning of the month is when we do it?
Well... Yeah.
Okay.
Not the first Friday because it's usually
well,
like,
let's schedule it so
I
we
already
know when
did.
it is.
I already put it on the calendar.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. It's like the second Friday.
Someone say hi to Jay Bates. Is he in the chat room?
Yeah, he's in the chat.
Jay, what's happening, dude? Thanks for stopping by. What the hell? I lost track of what we were talking about. Okay. It kind of depends sometimes with the hinges. There are sort of rules of thumb in terms of hinge placement, but you have to be careful because not all hinges are created the same. Some hinges are just downright crappy, and the way that they're milled, they're just not very accurate. So you have to be careful about which ones you use. But if you're using something like Brusso hinges, those things are dead on. So sometimes you want the barrel centered at the back end of the work. A lot of times what I do, and it seems to work pretty well, is I will turn the hinge over, flip it over so the barrel side that extends is facing down. And then that's actually my depth gauge. I let the barrel go right up against the back of the work, and that's as far as it goes in. Then I could scribe around it and cut my mortise. So you just have to look at the hinge, the thickness of the workpiece, but most of the time, I try to make that work because it's a built-in index. And I thought I had a hinge here. Oh, yeah, look at that. Demo time.
We went to Michael's.
I went to Michael's and bought a hinge. No, actually, I got this from Home Depot.
Oh, I thought that was Michael's.
Right, so you've got your hinge here. You got a piece of wood over there, Nicole? I got one. Here we go.
There's one down there.
A couple pieces of wood here. Oh, that's even better yet. So let's say you're putting a hinge, box side, something like this. You can get away with, many times, just taking that barrel with the barrel side down like this and putting that right on the edge of the work. So you see the relationship there is established by the barrel sitting right on top or pushing right up against the face of the workpiece. That can work, but again, you have to just double check because sometimes the hinge is actually happiest if it's centered. The barrel is centered over the very edge. So just kind of depends, looks into it, but for me, most of the time, using that barrel as a guide works really, really well. Okay, what's so funny?
Nothing.
Okay, nothing's funny.
Nothing's funny.
It's Friday Live, why would anything be funny? Alex Leffelman says, did you learn anything, this is a good one, new from Cremona a couple weeks ago or vice versa? Did having him in the shop level up any aspect of your woodworking? Interested to hear if you two contributed anything specific to each other's respective game by working together.
I know what you did.
I wish I would have been able to ask Matt this question.
I know. I know what he would say.
What would he say?
The power carving.
Yeah, I showed Matt how to do some power carving.
Yeah.
Not something obviously he could have picked it up and tried it himself, but I already have all the tools. He was able to try different ones out. He used some of the carving burrs. And not everybody can take a turbo plane or like the really heavy duty industrial carver and just hit the wood and be happy. Like a lot of times you go that far, those things are so aggressive, you just cut right through it. So he was able to start with the burrs and he's like, yeah, this is too slow. And then he moved up in aggressiveness.
So he could feel it.
And then he feels the difference. And by the time he got to the turbo plane, he's like, oh yeah, having a good time. So, like I said, he could have certainly done that on his own, but it was cool to be able to show him, give him some little tips and stuff, and he just, went off running with it. Literally, I saw him running down the driveway with my angle grinder.
It's mine, it's
And I said, young man, get back in the house and put your pants on. What did I learn from Cremona? What would you say I learned? Did I talk about anything?
I don't know.
Hey, what was cool about having Cremona here was it was just another brain in the shop to bounce ideas off of. So when we're talking about things like my garden gate, and it was like, how thick should the shiplap panels be? Should we go with a 1/2 inch? And we're kind of bouncing these ideas of dimensions, different ways, and you'll see in the garden gate build some of the cool things I did to let the water fall off. Whenever you're building outdoor pieces, you should absolutely be thinking about water travel and where it goes and where gravity is going to send it. So we came up with cool ways to try to get this gate to actually drain water wherever it has potential to get trapped. So we were bouncing ideas back and forth on that. So just having another talented, intelligent woodworker to bounce ideas off of. I had to do one more frame after Cremona left, and this was one featuring some cool bits from Eagle America. And I can tell you, I had the absolute worst day in the shop that I have had in years. What was it, yesterday or the day before?
I don't know. You weren't happy.
When I had to make this frame myself because I just wasn't into it, right? And I'm trying to put profiles on and cut bevels. So if you put the profile in too soon and then you go to cut the bevel at the table saw afterwards, you don't have as much reference surface, so it becomes really unsafe. And it was one of those things that I know if Cremona was here, sometimes my throat closes when I'm trying to talk. I don't know. It just says, I don't want you to speak, Spagnola. So if Matt was here, I guarantee we would have talked through some of these things and we would have caught each other's errors before they got out of control. Yeah. And I think that's one of the best things about having someone else in the shop.
So everybody keeps on talking about Matt's pancake game. I just want to let everybody know, I schooled both of them with my crunchy French toast.
I'm going to tell you, here's what happened with the pancakes, okay? I tried my recipe first, and we all ate. And I think I went a little bit too heavy on the flour. They weren't as flavorful as they usually are, but I mean, it was pancakes. It was fine. A couple days later, Matt tried his pancakes, and his pancakes, I think he just messed up his recipe. There was too much baking powder, was it? So the pancakes almost like they were burning, right?
A little bit.
And did we decide if it's basic or acidic, right? The baking soda or the baking powder makes it basic, I think.
I mean, I've done cookie recipes where I've accidentally mixed
baking soda and baking powder.
Yeah. And
so it was off. And I love the addition of the bacon grease. In fact, I would like to try my recipe with bacon grease added to it, but he, he's making it in a different kitchen with different stuff and a different quantity.
Yep.
Usually he says he's, making just for him and his son. So this was, he's making pancakes for like 4 other people, and the recipe was just a little bit off. So it was almost a disqualification. Yeah. And then Nicole comes along. It's like, hey, everybody, look at my crunchies.
We had some French bread. We had, I made a pasta dish. I just kind of threw it together, and then I had fresh bread. And so I cut that up the night before, and then I used that for my French toast.
And if you guys haven't seen it, we actually have that recipe published on the website from years ago. Yeah. Crunchy French toast. You could probably Google it and find our video. Huh?
The Wood Whisperer. It's on the Wood Whisperer.
It is on our website.
It's hilarious.
So it's a great recipe, and that basically just knocked both of our pancakes out of the kitchen, and I think we both agree that we were defeated. Yeah. Solidly
that recipe,
by Nicole.
It's so funny because the crunchy French toast recipe, that was a show that we were kind of tinkering with. It was called Everyday How To. We never did that.
We
did one episode, and that was it.
Well, when you do something like the Wood Whisperer, it's kind of all consuming, and it's hard to find time to do other things. Before I do another question, you wanted to address something with the new guild-free tier.
Have you talked? Were you going to show the frames?
Nah.
You're not going to show the frames?
We keep showing them every week. I've got enough of frames. We'll see it when it's done.
So yeah,
So Nicole said that there was a post in the Facebook group on the Guild Facebook group, people sort of speculating what this means. And I'll just tell you what it is real quick. It's no secret. We are starting a free tier of the Guild. The purpose of this free tier is to get people inside the Guild to see what it's like, to see what a project layout looks like, to get a taste of what plans are like in the Guild, and to just see it before they have to make a purchase. I mean, right now, the cheapest way to get into the Guild is $40.
25.
Well, that's for the simple varnish finish, but if you want a project, which opens up full access to everything, it's 40. And if you actually if you don't want that project, you want one of the others, you're looking at 70, 80, up to upwards of $100 per project at full price. So that's tough. That's a tough pill to swallow. So we want people to see what this is like and not have to pay a dime, right? And that's what this is about. So if you're an existing Guild member, you'll get this too. You're not getting anything, taken away from you or held back. You get access to this as well. But anyone will be able to go in, sign up, get a free account. This is actually it is a free tier account. There are things that are going to be locked down that you'll see, have a little padlock on it. You'll click on it and it'll tell you, you have to do this to open it up. So you're not getting everything, but you're getting a taste of what the plans and the videos are like. Yeah. And the frames that we built with Matt, those are the subject of that particular free tier. And we might add more things to the free tier in the future. But for now, that's it. So these folks who join the free tier will not have access to our live Guild meetings. They will not have access to our interviews, the archive of interviews. They actually will get to see one of each. Yeah. So when they go to the Guild meetings, they'll see the latest Guild meeting. When they go to the interviews, they'll see one interview. Okay. And they will not have access to the Facebook group. Right. Okay? People were making jokes because the Facebook group is pretty awesome. The Guild Facebook group is really good. Great people.
Spend a lot of time managing that.
Yeah, and it is all Guild members. The free tier folks will not be getting access to that group.
So Vic in the chat room, he said a taste. They're dealing.
Yeah. Look, we have a lot of experience getting people hooked on things. I'm not going to say how or why, but we find that if you just give them a little taste, that first taste is free, they come back.
I'm excited about it because this is something that people have been emailing us and saying, I just want to see what it's like before I buy.
In a day and age where there is so much content and really, let's be honest, good content on YouTube with building projects and things like that, it's really hard to justify spending any money whatsoever on a project like this. So people do need to see what this thing looks like and why it's worth paying. And it may not be worth it for everybody, so maybe we'll save some people money. But ultimately, we think once you see it and you find a project that interests you, you're going to want to buy it because I'm going to say this. I'm going to toot my horn here. Ready? Some people think I'm arrogant, and I'm going to live up to it right now. All right? It's not arrogance, it's confidence. There's a difference. Our stuff in the Guild, I would say, is probably the best woodworking plan presentation. If you actually want to build a project, the plans, the written plans, the SketchUp drawing, and the video presentation as a whole, as well as the website interaction and the support, cannot be beat. I don't think anybody comes close to what we do.
Well, And we should say,
toot toot. Sorry, that's me tooting.
The combination of the video and the work that John Funk does with us. It's an amazing collaboration.
Yeah.
So John is
Our buddy John
amazing.
is the technical side of everything and also business strategist with us. So we've got 3 or 4 minds trying to make this as good as it can be. Enough about the guild.
Enough.
Let's answer Alex's question.
Yeah.
So did I learn anything from Cremona? I learned that if a recipe calls for too much baking powder, you might want to dial it back a little bit. How's that? Let's see, Mark Nyland says, good morning, Marc and Nicole. Have you ever sprayed melamine with satin water-based poly? I have some cherry frame doors with melamine panels, and I'm trying to take the lazy way out and just spray the entire door, hoping that I don't need to mask the melamine. So talk amongst yourselves and help me, please. I don't have any experience with that, though. I will say melamine is a surface that doesn't absorb anything. So if you have a finish going on top of it, it better be a finish that's capable of binding and grabbing onto that surface without having absorption, okay? Some things like, for instance, an oil finish needs to be absorbed into the fibers for it to really dry. If it doesn't do that, then it just sits on the top and becomes a sticky puddle. Water-based finish might be okay, but I think you're gonna have to experiment. Definitely test this out first, because I imagine if you don't do any prep work, it's probably just gonna flake right off, or you could take your thumbnail and just take it right off the surface. But what may help is if you scratch up the surface a little bit. So take that melamine and you know, grab a grit that doesn't necessarily make it look different, but allows you to put some kind of what they call a mechanical tooth, giving the finish something to bind to. And again, experiment, because that may not work either. So I had no experience, but that's what I would do to jump into experimentation. Folks in the chat room, if you've ever tried this or you think it's a really terrible idea, let Marc know.
I'll be reading.
She'll be reading.
I'll be reading.
You know what?
My foot's asleep.
I bought some JB Weld epoxy yesterday because I was doing some stuff and I needed 5-minute variety.
JB Smooth?
Some JB Smooth epoxy. So I'm applying this epoxy. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? That wasn't bad, right?
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Okay.
That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to. I hope he's on the new season.
The new season of Curb Your Enthusiasm. Yeah, he's funny.
Yeah.
One of my favorite comedians. Okay, so this stuff reminds me. Do you guys have this where a grandparent smell memory? And I don't mean like the poop smell.
Yeah.
Just like when maybe it's food or something.
For me, it's the smell of a basement.
Basement smell?
Like a musty, dank.
Yeah,
and,
I get that.
And also Scotch tape always reminds me of Christmas.
Scotch tape.
Yeah.
Okay.
You just give me a thing of Scotch tape and it smells like Christmas.
I get that. Well, this classic 5-minute epoxy, especially the JB Weld brand, reminds me of my grandfather. He had a fish and tackle store in Trenton, and I used to repair rods and reels with him. And one of his primary components, especially for the rod repairs, was epoxy. And he would use it to put tips on and just all kinds of things. And that smell of classic standard 5-minute epoxy like permeated my grandparents' house at all times. Also the smell of dirt and a dog that wanted to bite my face off. But I don't know, it was kind of fun, just smelling grandpa. And
smelling glue. No, that's
okay.
Terrible.
Okay, Aaron, last question I have here. He's fiending for a Ruobo.
Yeah.
I've dreamed so long that I want to make sure I don't have any regrets. Purchased lumber this week. Cost a good chunk. Plan to buy the Benchcrafted Maker's Kit, but have to give my wallet a couple of weeks break between purchases. Yeah, no doubt. If I start building this weekend before I have hardware, how bad will I hurt myself? P.S. Does anyone really use those attached bench stools? Okay, I don't know. We might want to get you one of those attached bench stools.
It just goes into it?
They basically hook on the leg and rotate
swing
out.
Oh,
I think
it would make me too low.
It wouldn't be for you because it's more for working height. I don't know that you would like it.
Okay.
I don't know. Do people use those things? Or is it a gimmick? I don't know. It might be neat. I don't have one. Well, you have so much to do, Aaron. Like even before the hardware gets there, you've got a lot of work to do. I say get started now. Even if it's a couple of weeks, chances are you're still going to be working on your top and getting those details worked out. So I would not hesitate to start the project. And that, my friends, is it for preloaded questions.
I have some super chats. I also have some chats from our Discord chat room.
Grandpa.
Get out. Stop doing that.
Okay.
That's not...
It's got a cap on it. I can barely smell it.
Scott Griffith did a super chat. Said, picked up some Flamed Birch.
Ooh.
read it has natural waxes. What's the best way to finish if it has wax?
Flamed Birch has natural waxes?
I don't know.
I don't mean to contest what you're saying, but generally birch, you know, as sort of a standard domestic species is a lot like maple in a way.
That's what I thought.
And I've never experienced anything with natural waxiness to it. If there is, that I'm not aware of, it's never been to any degree that it would cause problems for finishing. If there were some kind of like natural waxy content to it, you would probably have issues with things like oil-based finishes. And I've finished many a birch project in oil-based finish and stain and never really had a problem. So someone correct me if I'm wrong on that, please, because, you know,
but what
it
if
could very well be.
What if a wood does have wax? How do you normally get around finishing it?
Well, most wood doesn't have wax.
Right.
Most wood has, you know,
oil.
It might have oils and resins that kind of leach out, but that's not wax.
Right.
So I don't know. Usually if a wood has wax, it's a turning blank, or it's a piece that's, you know, drying.
Right.
So they put, you know, maybe anchor seal wax on the end grain. Usually wax just isn't typically a problem.
Interesting. Yeah, Danny H.
Yeah, so
Birch
to
is
answer
not
your
an
question,
oily wood.
yeah, if it's oily or waxy, let's use that as a term. There are things you can do. You could usually hit it with some shellac as sort of a binder to go on top, and that'll be okay to kind of give you a barrier between that waxy or oily surface and your next coat of finish. A lot of times you could just get away with using a solvent-based finish like shellac or lacquer, and those don't seem to have as much of a problem with those oily surfaces, but that's if you want to use lacquer. All right, what do we got? Someone at the door?
Did you let Millie outside?
No.
Okay.
Usually this time, if somebody's coming to our door,
It's usually a package.
it's either a package or it's our dog setting the alarm off of
well,
saying,
I'll take
someone at your front door. Okay, let's go. Questions.
Make it a ring.
Let's go. Questions.
Advertisement. We have another super chat from Ness G. She says, "Good day. How are you doing?
Good day, Ness.
You guys are worth the wait, but it's a half past midnight here, and I'm pretty sure I've turned into a pumpkin."
Oh no.
But Mateo had a great week. All kinds of at Kindy. Cheers. Chat to you soon.
Thanks, Ness.
Nobody's there.
It's crazy that I forgot the time difference.
Yeah.
So it's midnight for her? Holy
Ness,
smokes.
you're
dedicated.
Dedicated.
That is one dedicated lady. I love her image there of the girl with the hammer and the ponytail.
I like that too. So we have a few chats. I've been grabbing questions everywhere. Chris St. Croix. Can Marc talk briefly about the wall units he made for his planes and the other tools? I'm making similar things, and I'd like to get a closer look.
I took a day and I'm like, look, everything I want to hang on this wall has a means to be hung in some sort of custom fashion, right?
Right.
So all I'm using is like little strips of 1/4-inch plywood. This is just furring strips from Home Depot. Actually, I got them from Lowe's. I will say, Lowe's, their furring strips, real nice. Compared to Home Depot. They're beveled on the edges, and that's actually really good quality. So it's all leftover stock, all 2x4 material, just, you know, crap material. And I just thought about how do I want these things to be hung. What I did here was created a little gap. And again, this strip helps support that in the front. And that little gap, what do you think that's there for? The blade. So if I want to keep my blades out, now I'm also one of those people who doesn't buy into you absolutely must retract your blades when you put them down on the surface, because if that wood can hurt my blade just by putting it down, then materials don't work the way we think they work. The whole point is that the metal is so hard, it's really unlikely that it's going to be damaged or prematurely dulled to any extent that I've been bothered by. For other people, maybe you're much more picky about this stuff, it bothers you. It doesn't really bother me that much. But that said, just in case, because it's a cool idea, put that little gap in there, and then now when you rest your plane in that location, you actually can still place it down on the surface, and your blade is hanging safely in that gap over there. So all of the plane hangers feature a gap like that. And I didn't do it for the block planes, but that's fine. And this way, you don't have to worry about it. Right? And that's all it is. It's super simple. There's nothing to it.
Danny said you might want to consider putting something on the ends in case we have an earthquake. We got bigger problems.
If we have an earthquake that can knock this thing off the wall, we definitely have bigger problems than my Lee Nielsen hand planes. But yes, if that's a concern, certainly you could put a little end cap on it. This one here is the same thing, except for I just put a little divider between each one of the block planes and put it up in an angle because, I don't know, why not? And then screwed Deadpool's hands to it. Let's see some of the other ones. You know, I don't know if you could see these over here. The shoulder planes. Yeah.
I have lots of questions.
Okay. The shoulder planes, they're just, you know, similar thing, but just held up. The front ridge is high enough to prevent it from falling forward. And then I just made little custom cradles for everything.
All right. We have a question from Scott Hampshire.
Oh, that guy.
How big do you and Marc want to make the guild? Oh, would you ever do in-person classes? Kind of example woodcraft-esque. Or do you plan on keeping it exclusively online video?
We want it to be freaking huge. I think exclusively online.
Yeah.
I think what makes the guild work is its accessibility, trying to make it as good as it can possibly be online. So we give people who can't get to places for classes or can't afford them or don't want to and want to work at their own shop, at their own timetable. So the thing is, by focusing on that, we make it as good as it can possibly be with that technology.
Right.
All right. And if we start focusing on things like in-person classes, it's going to take us away from that, because to make a good in-person class, totally different thing. And from a business perspective, you can't even compare the business potential, I would say, of an in-person class versus online digital classes.
Right.
From a business perspective, we make the course once, and then we support it with questions, if there are any, and then you can sell that multiple times. But you only had to do the work once. With a class, let's say you get 5 or 6 people in there, you now have gone through a week's worth of work.
Unless you film it.
Unless you film it, but who wants to take a class when someone's dealing with a camera in their way all the time? You teach those 5 or 6 people, you get paid for that work, but then you have nothing when it's done, right? You have 5 or 6 happy customers, but monetarily speaking, and from a business perspective, there's nothing else to make money off of from that endeavor, right? So for us digitally, we put everything we have into that one digital product, and it's so much easier to continue to sell.
That's why we do professional captions. That's why the way that if you've never been inside the guild, the way the videos, it's done by chapters. It's like very involved. It's just it's a totally different experience.
It's a next level experience.
Yeah.
You know, it's the closest thing you're going to get to an in-person class without actually being there. And I think we want it to get as big as it can get within the confines of what we're willing to do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I see his name all the time. Is it Sheriff?
Sharif?
Sharif. For someone with a planer / thicknesser. Thicknesser, but no table saw, how would you suggest they joint the final edge of a board and keep it parallel, assuming you've joined one edge and face thickness plane the other face?
Hold on.
Blah, 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 blah.
Okay, so for someone with a planer but no table saw, how would you suggest they joint the final edge of a board and keep it parallel, assuming you've joined one edge and face? Well, I don't know what the capacity of your planer is, but turn it sideways. If you're not, if you're doing like a 12-inch wide board, certainly could be problematic. But I'll do this all the time, especially with thicker material like 8/4. Instead of ripping it at the table saw, I flip all my pieces over and bring my planer head, or it's a table that moves on mine, bring the table down, and then I just plane them on the edge. And that's a great way to get a parallel surface. And as long as you're within the capacity of your planer, you'll be fine.
Hey, speaking of woodworking classes, have you told people where you are going to be next year teaching a class? Can we?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, it's sort of official. He's putting us in the catalog, so I guess it must be.
I mean, that's probably as close as it's going to get to a guild project, because you know what you're building, right?
Yeah.
What are you building?
Well, to give everyone all the info.
I know, I'm being very evasive here, because I'm like,
I think it'll be in 2018, probably late summer, fall 2018. I'm teaching a class at the Marc Adams School.
Yep.
And what we decided on was a coffee table that is done in the theme of the gaming dining table.
Yeah.
So we're going to take some of those elements and try to downsize them into a coffee table format, which I think will be great, like with the kids and stuff. Having them sit at the dining room table and playing games, putting puzzles together, doing Legos, not quite as appealing as a coffee table. because a lot of times the kids, there's a TV on, we're all hanging out. The living room is definitely much more of an appropriate place for that type of thing.
So you have an advance warning. You can plan almost a year in advance if you do want to take it.
Yeah, I'm not sure when it'll be live, but
yeah.
He got all the info from me, so I think it's official.
So if you want to take a live in-person guild class, there you go.
There you go.
Indiana in the summer. We have a question from Benjamin. Do you ever try to avoid combining certain woods? I know that often we use complementary accent woods, but are there any woods that you simply try not to put together? And if so, what?
Yeah, I think there's two things you have to look at with wood species and combining. You have grain texture and grain appearance just in general. So if you look at something like cherry, which is what I've got here, and then you compare, this is a better example of cherry. And you compare that with white oak or red oak and look at the grain. Okay, this is very muted. There's not a lot of pore pockets in the surface. But if you look at oak, you've got very deep pore pockets, very deep grain lines, and also a dark grain to it. So if you hit it with finish, that grain tends to really pop quite a bit, and that may not be a good thing, depending on what you're going to do. So grain is certainly something to look at, and then color, of course. So if you have there's two traps that people do. You either do this like garish contrast with things that just don't make any sense together, or you may put two woods that are a little bit too close to one another and they don't look that great. So for instance, maple and cherry. Now as the cherry darkens, you'll get a little bit more contrast and it tends to look better over time. But when you have freshly milled cherry next to maple, they're almost too close in color that the difference becomes a little bit, it's kind of negligible. But again, over time, the cherry will darken and that contrast gets a little bit better to look at. So off the top of my head, I don't have any specific examples, but you look at the colors and go, well, would you put, what would you do in your house? Would you put a red wall and then a blue wall right next to it? Mm-hmm. Or would you go with red and something that maybe has an earth tone brown, right. That has, hints of that red? You got to think about the same complementary color stuff that you do with painting. But again, we have the additional factor of grain combinations. So I would not want to put a open-pored, open-grained wood species next to something that is nice and clean and smooth on the surface. They just kind of look weird together. So
Ben
for me.
Also wants to know, you mentioned in the Barrister bookcase video that one day you might go back and add lighting. Did you ever do that?
Just as a hint, so you know, if I ever, in a video, or even live, say, in the future, I think I'm going to go back and do that, it's never going to happen. Right? That's code for, I want credit for having the idea, but I'm actually not going to execute this, ever.
Unless I
hound me for a couple of years? Yeah. So that won't happen, but I will say that Ava broke the door off of the bottom Barrister bookcase. Yeah. So that will be a future update video, was to show how to repair the door. And we built it for repairability. Yeah. So we'll see how well it works. But little girl said, nah. She He-manned it off of there and broke the damn thing for me.
JB Alexander just did a super chat. Hey, how do you feel about the difference in surfaces after hand planing versus sanding? Specifically, any preferences on different wood species?
The easier a wood is to plane, the better the results will be if you're just doing like a final pass with a smoothing plane. So I find cherry, for instance, is very easy to work, very easy to plane, so that if I have, maybe I'm doing some tapered legs that I can get with a standard plane, I can get a full pass shaving in one shot. That's a surface that I might leave alone. And I agree with folks who say that the planed surfaces are better than a sanded or equivalently sanded surface. The problem is, if the piece is so wide that I have to make multiple passes, there are slight discrepancies from pass to pass. And if you're really good with your planes and you're taking very light passes and you just have a lot of skill, you could probably make those almost undetectable. I'm not that good. So when I do my multiple pass, with the smoothing plane, I almost always have tiny little ridge lines that I am inclined to sand out. So I will always hit my stuff with a little bit of sanding. But one pass, and it covers the whole thing like a skinny little leg, then you have a perfectly clean surface that I don't feel the need to hit with a sander.
I guess that was my grammar that Bill was correcting.
On what?
Species.
Oh, really?
I don't know. but I don't really care. Ness wants to know what's going to be the Woodworkers Fighting Cancer project this year.
Shouldn't Ness be sleeping?
I know,
Ness. I thought she was going to bed.
Well, we have to wrap this up so she can go to bed.
No, okay, we have to stop, guys.
This is our last question.
Ness needs to go to sleep. Woodworkers Fighting Cancer, we are teetering back and forth between a couple different project ideas. We definitely want to go more towards something that's a functional toy, something that's a little bit easier to build. We've been toying with the idea of like a beanbag toss thing. What do you call those things?
Beanbag toss.
Bunghole game. What's it called?
Bunghole game.
What's it called? Oh, cornhole.
Cornhole.
Not bunghole. I like bunghole better. So cornhole game is a possibility, but the problem is we need to design something that is distinctly because we have to verify that people are building it. People have been building these things forever. So someone could build something 10 years ago and send us a picture and be like, here's my contribution. Well, we want it to be a little bit more fair than that. And so I don't know 100% sure. That's one of the things we're considering, but also a nice little pool toy. Was a possibility. We actually just want to simplify things this year.
Someone, I think it was Nathan. So we
cornhole. Now can we all just agree now, from now on, it's bunghole.
Bunghole. We have a number of shop teachers that get their classes involved. And every year they email me earlier and earlier, have you picked it yet? I'm like,
they want to get started.
We haven't gotten it yet. We're working on it. In fact, I'm in the process of trying to make sure the charity that we've chosen has a online fundraising page. So that's my first step, and then it's a matter of getting the project. But someone suggested a workbench, a kid's workbench. I'm like, that's too complicated.
The problem is the system is set up to be based on pledges. So the more people who build, the better the charity event goes, and the more people just feel like they can get involved. If this is going to be a multi-weekend project, less people are going to be able to do it. So we don't want to make it a paper airplane contest where as long as it flies you get credit. We want to do something that is a little bit more effort, but not quite as difficult as a castle bookcase.
Right.
Like that. It was cool. That was a cool project, and it was neat to see how many people were able to build it. But I feel like it gets a little bit too complicated.
Well, you want to challenge people, but also not make it a huge barrier to do it.
It's so much less about the project and more about the charity, right? So we need something that is, yes, it's a cool project, but maybe not the most difficult thing.
I still like that kid's rocking chair was pretty easy. I know. You know
what I'm saying? Okay. So, do we have any more super chats?
No more super chats.
Are we done?
It's 11 o'clock. We need to wrap this up, and Ness needs to go to bed.
Yeah, go to bed, Ness. Okay, so just to thank some folks who helped us out on Patreon. Again, patreon.com/woodwhisper. Blake Farmer, Rod's Workshop, William Zaharis, and James Hazelberg. Thank you for helping us out, folks. We really appreciate it.
I do have a last-minute super chat.
Go for it.
From Mike Coates. I plan to make a bent arm mortise chair. How do you deal with the edge grain so it doesn't look like bent plywood?
Well, you mill, he's basically talking about bent lamination. Bent lamination is a series of thinner pieces of wood that, because they're thin, you can now bend them in a form with glue between each layer, and then it holds its shape. What happens is sometimes you get a visible glue line. So there are only two things that I know of that you can do to prevent that from being super obvious. One is to make sure that each strip is sanded thoroughly and nice and smooth. So if you have a drum sander, sand those babies until they're smooth, because that is one thing, just like any other joint, the smoother they are and the better they fit, the smaller that gap between them will be. So as long as they're super smooth, and strategy number two, use a good glue that's close in color to what you're building. So if the glue is really dark, each one of those glue lines becomes more obvious. Okay, so you can also think about tinting the glue depending on which one you have, but try to get it as close as possible to the final color of the wood, and then that grain line or that glue line is hidden quite a bit better. Also, of course, make sure your pieces are sequentially matched. All right, so if you're cutting these out of a board, try to make sure you keep them in order, because if you keep them in order, then the grain runs through those joint lines.
Do you cover this in the Morris chair build that you did?
Sure, we covered that.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's just general bent lamination, sort of 101 stuff. But those are the things that I would do.
So pick a winner.
Chicken dinner. I like I like that one. Alex Leffelman's question about what did Cremona and I learn from one another.
There we go. So Alex, I will be in touch with you and get you set up. And Geronimo from last week, he contacted me and I got him set up with the gaming table. His wife wanted the gaming table.
Nice, and he's probably like, oh, geez, here we go. It's a big project, that gaming table.
Yeah, it is.
All right, well, thanks for watching, everybody. We always appreciate you helping us out on Patreon, and thanks for watching the shows, and hopefully you're enjoying the stuff. I did do the Patreon thanks already.
I wasn't paying attention, sorry.
And I've got a shop to clean up because I am still post-Cremona messy.
Yeah.
I can't find a damn pencil anywhere. I don't know what he did with them.
What are those?
These are drill bits.
No. The gel pens.
Oh.
What are those for?
These are the notebooks.
Oh.
You have to use these Pilot friction pens on the Rocket books.
I was wondering what that was, because I thought they were pretty cool. Erasable. I was like,
erasable pens. Yeah.
Cool.
It's very cool. If you guys didn't see that on the Offcuts channel, I do have a video about the Rocket books, which I've been using in the shop, and I kind of like it.
Which one do you like best so far?
The Everlast. There's two of them, the Wave and the Everlast. Everlast, you just wipe with a damp rag to clean it off, and it's totally reusable. And the Wave is something you have to microwave to get the ink to go. It's a heat activated, or heat. It disappears with heat. But you have a limited number of times you can microwave it.
Cool.
And there's just, there's just something weird about microwaving a notebook. You know what I mean? It's just an odd thing to do. Like, it's something, I don't want my kids to see me doing it because it teaches them.
They're gonna start putting stuff in the
You can put non-food items in the microwave. It's just not a good example to set. So I'll stick with the Everlast.
All right.
All right. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Bye. Thanks for hanging out.
Have a great weekend.